welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. How are y'all doing out there? Hopefully well. I'm of course your host, Mark Krishnez, and you can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you'd like to support my shows, if you already know you like them, if this is your first time catching a show, listening to a show, watching a show, maybe saying to yourself, what the hell are you asking for support? I don't even know if I like you. Well, I'm sorry. But you can do so over at patreon.com/pxs. And if you want links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and everything else, you can find all of them over at pxsausage.com. But what do I have to talk about on today's episode? I have a lot, quite a bit, including No Place Like Home, Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, The London Case, Smurfs Kart, Dogfight, a sausage bomber story, Sengoku Dynasty, and a bit of DLC for Cow the Kangaroo, which I may be pronouncing that wrong because I know I initially, when I talked about that game, pronounced the name wrong, and then I learned the correct pronunciation, but it's been far too long since then. But I got all that to talk about. Was there any news that happened? I don't know. As I told Enchi once before, after he left a comment saying he likes my take on various news stories and whatnot, that I don't pay attention these days. So if there's ever anything he or anyone wants me to comment on, wants to hear my opinions on, you've got to leave a comment or mention it to me somewhere. Comment on the site, on the YouTube, somewhere. Let me know. So there's nothing. I can't think of anything. There's probably plenty of stuff, but again, just cannot think of a damn thing. I also want to try, this is something I've talked about before multiple times, but I'm going to use this episode as an attempt to try and be better about superfluous words and phrases and dialogue, like for instance, you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying. A popular one amongst myself is the problem is, and I would like to stop saying the problem is and instead just say what the problem is. We'll see how it goes. This is an exercise for me, in part because I think all of that extra stuff, while some people may enjoy it, most people may not notice it or care. I know that I'm way more sensitive to that stuff as both a creator and a consumer. And for some people, they like it because it adds a bit of character to a person's way of speech, gives them somewhat of a personality, even though it's not particularly unique. It does identify them to a certain extent. I think it just gets in the way of the meat and potatoes, sweet potatoes specifically. Don't give me any of them Idaho potatoes. I don't need any of them worthless potatoes. They might taste pretty good, but they have way less beneficial purposes. But it also is something for me that would help in getting the delayed thoughts and opinions and all of that out of my head so that I can better focus and better be able to express myself and get to how I feel about something instead of the jumble mess that is inside my brain. Anywho, let us get on to what I've been playing. Start with No Place Like Home. No Place Like Home is a farming, crafting, drilling simulator, I guess, where Earth has been destroyed essentially, and people have to go into space and colonize new planets, I believe, but I don't remember the specifics there. However, you are playing a young girl who is going back to Earth because you're one of the last people to get a ride out, and you want to see your grandfather who has remained on the planet, but he might be dead. He might have died and left his ranch and all that jazz there. The story is pretty whatever, and I appreciate at least the fact that it does throw you in and doesn't overwhelm you with a lot of text and a lot of story. You get story from characters, from their quests, and I started skipping that stuff immediately. Your first quest giver is a little chicken named Cornelius, and they're telling you a whole bunch of stuff, and I just could not care any less. I also found it annoying that in the dialogue sections, whereas in most games while you're watching text scroll by and it's waiting to fill in the entire text box, if you press A or whatever the advanced button is on your correlating device, your correlating input, it would first show you, it would just advance to showing you the entirety of that particular bit of dialogue. And then you'd press it again to advance to the next bit of dialogue. In No Place Like Home, it advances to the next bit of dialogue. So if you want to skip the scrolling text so that you can read it faster because you're reading it faster than it's scrolling, too fucking bad. You just have to wait for it to scroll if you care enough about the story. Otherwise, you'll just advance to the next bit of dialogue. I found that annoying. And there are a lot of things about that, or things about the way it's designed that are annoying and add up to making the whole experience pretty annoying. The way the game is structured is frustrating in that, as I said at the top of the game description, whatever, part of the game is a drilling simulator, in that the entire world, the slice of the world that you interact with, so you have your farm and then you branch out to swampy areas and industrial areas. There's a whole underground system as well that you gradually open up and create shortcuts for, and eventually we'll be able to make it so that you can travel through the entirety without having to go topside. Every single bit of this world, underground, above ground, all of it is covered in these 10 to 15 foot high rock formations that you have to drill in order to get them out of the way so you can continue advancing and seeing more of the world. They're not even rock formations. I don't know why I said that, because when you destroy them, you get piles of junk, plastic bags, pieces of whatever. So the world is essentially one giant dump that you are drilling your way through and cleaning up. One of the early areas is polluted, and then you have to get a pollution robot device to clean it up. And then it looks really nice. When you do that to that area specifically, it becomes so nice, and it makes all the other areas, even the farm, which is already pretty nice, look like not dog shit in comparison, but it is so much nicer and so much more pleasant that I wish I could just hang out there the whole time. But the entire world is full of junk that you have to drill through, and drilling is tedious. Even as you advance your drill and upgrade it, it's still tedious to just have to do this all the fucking time. And you have your crafting, you have your farming, you have animal cultivating, animal caring for. You can build some buildings that allow you to get chickens and pigs and dogs and robots to your farm. I was trying to think of exactly what I would call it. I'm not drafting them. I'm not enlisting them, but I'm just thinking about military terms for whatever stupid reason. You fucking trick them into coming. You give them a little food and you say, hey, come here. And then when they're at your farm, they'll give you resources every day. So the chicken will give you eggs. The pigs give you truffles. I'm assuming that's what they were. Some kind of dirty ass looking thing. And when you collect the resources from them every day, they'll either want food or to be showered with water. And then you do that with all of that. And then with the farming, you just plant your shit, water it every day, and eventually it'll grow up. Yeah, it'll grow up like a human. And then when it's of age, you fucking rip it out of the ground and you do whatever you want with it. You create mayo from it, preserves, get some honey from all your beehives. And the preserves, so you use food of various types to create preserves, and preserves are used for crafting. Not for crafting, they're for purchasing recipes or upgrades. And then for crafting, you use the electronics and something else or whatever. So that there's that whole element. One of the most frustrating things, though, in the game, to go off of the finicky nature and how, what was the thing that I talked about early on that was a little frustrating? Oh yeah, the dialogue stuff, how it's a little clunky and weird in ways. The character, whenever you stop moving, they will they will always position themselves to face north, directly north, always. So, and if you rotate the camera, they'll rotate with it so that they're still looking north, straight ahead. But what this means is that if you want to interact with something, you have to make sure you position the character so that they will be looking at it, so that the thing that you want to interact with is directly north, or position your character and then rotate the camera so that the object is perfectly north. You can't come at something from the side and have the character look at it from the side or an angle or any other direction other than north. That is incredibly frustrating. Of course, as you play more and more, you'll get used to it and it won't become a huge problem because you'll just beat it in your head that that's how you have to interact with the game and interact with the characters and objects and everything in the game. But it is annoying and it is weird to move your character around the environment, and no matter where you're looking when you stop, they'll automatically just jerk themselves to looking north. But in the 6 to 8 hours I put into the game, it did not do a whole lot for me. The drilling was excessive. It's just, there's just so much fucking drilling and it's so boring. And that is the biggest issue I had with the game, is that throughout my entire time with it, I was just bored. I never felt like any new area discovered, any quest I was on, any item I crafted, none of it filled me with excitement. It felt like a game that has all these systems in it. It has the farming, it has the crafting, it has the resource gathering, it has this drilling, it has exploration, the underground stuff, and making your way through there, unlocking new shortcuts, and doing a bit of very light puzzle solving in the sense of, here's a pattern on the wall of 4 objects, here are some buttons, press them in the correct order. Okay, that was the most taxing, elaborate puzzle I encountered in my time with the game. And there's combat as well. Forgot to mention that, but there are robots scattered around the environments. Some are very big, so they just take more hits. Some are small, and they'll attack you directly. Some will attack you from afar, and that's it so far that I've experienced. But the combat's very basic. You have food that you can refill your health, food that can So the food can make you run faster, move faster, give you more stamina, give you a boost to this, replenish your health, and so on and so forth. Or you can just sleep and replenish your health that way. You can put hats on all your animals at the farm. But it feels like a game where they had some good ideas, and they took a lot of ideas from a lot of different types of games, and they put them all in here. But that's as far as they went. They didn't give the game much of an identity, of a personality, of anything particularly unique, so it all fell flat and didn't at any point grab me and give me a reason to want to keep playing. The only reason I stuck with it is because it is very low energy, low attention requiring, so that I played a lot of it while I was making my way through the last 2 seasons of Supernatural, which are fucking awful. I hate that show. I can't believe I wasted so much of my life watching all 15 seasons. I don't regret things usually, and I think at times I've even said I've never regretted anything in my life. I regret watching Supernatural. It was a fucking waste of time. Ugh. All the bad about that show, it just gets worse and worse as it keeps going. And it doesn't get any better. The 15th season is just fan service bullshit. But you know what? No Place Like Home, as mundane and unexciting as it is, it made for good Supernatural gaming. So, good on you for that. But after playing it for the 6 or 8 hours again that I put into it, I stopped, and I'll probably go back, because if there's ever another instance where I need a distraction or some really low energy gaming to go along with some other crap, it's good for that. But I got to an area where once I entered it, all I saw, because the draw distance was pretty alright, in front of me were all these big old piles of junk, but in the distance, all I saw were piles of junk everywhere. You see a mountain, and there's a trail that goes back and forth that kind of swirls to the top. And you just see along the entire trail, there's just pile after pile after pile, because that's what they've done. They've created this map. At least that's what it seems like they did. It seems like they built the map for all these various areas, and then they just said, okay, put a pile, or when you are playing a game where you're able to create something, you select pile of junk, and then you hold down the button and you just scroll across the entire floor of the entire area so that it just drops a pile on every single piece of geometry that it's able to. Have fun drilling. That's what this game is predominantly. It's just drilling, and sucking up. You also have a fucking vacuum. I forgot to say that. But you have a vacuum so they can suck up all the fucking junk you bust with your drill. So there's a lot of drilling and fucking sucking. That's No Place Like Home. There really is no place like home for Sonny. Sonny, this is a game for you. Because you probably think the aesthetic and all that, and a fucking talking chicken named Cornelius is super adorable. And there's lots of sucking and drilling. So if there was ever a game for Sonny, it's No Place Like Home. Next up is Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, The London Case, which I think I'm pronouncing as good as I can, the character's name. Because when they mention it in the game, I was like, oh, it's not Hercule Poirot. I wouldn't have said Poirot. I wouldn't know how to say that. But Hercule Poirot is as close as I'll get. Because in the game, when they say the name, it sounds like they say Hercule with as little enunciation as it just sounds like they may be pronouncing the E as a U and somehow not managing to say everything else, yet you still know what they're saying. And I found it very frustrating because I'm like, how are you doing this? But I've never read an Agatha Christie novel to my knowledge, or any of the Hercule Poirot books, of course, obviously, given what I just said. I also have never watched any of the movies, so I have very little experience with this character or Agatha Christie in general. That said, this game is okay. It's a detective game where you go around interacting with objects, discovering clues, talking to people, discovering information about them that way. And then you, through the gaining of knowledge and clues, you build up this web of information and little points that you can then link together to understand clues better and to better solve cases, to actually figure out cases and solve cases. And when you're interacting with objects, you can do the whole rotate thing around, and with certain objects, you'll have a number of key points to find out about them, and they'll give you that number. So you scroll around them, and when the cursor is over something that is important, it'll expand a little bit to help you out. And you do all this. And it's kind of neat. The voice acting is also pretty solid, I'd say. I found it overall pretty good. The variation in accents felt pretty natural. Like they either got people who are very good at accents or potentially got people who fit those various backgrounds. That was good. And the writing's okay. But there is weirdness in the audio mixing and some of the deliveries, whether that is in the actual performances or the way they are cut together, so that dialogue can sometimes feel a bit stilted and not super fluid. But the more noticeable issue with the audio, specifically with dialogue, is that Ro has an internal monologue that he often goes into while talking to characters. So he'll talk to characters, they'll say something, he might say something, and then he'll go in an internal monologue. The internal monologue sounds like it was recorded through some kind of muffled closet where he was holding his microphone under a pile of clothes, or speaking while sticking his head into a pillow or something, because it is so muffled, it is so much more quiet and a little bit harder to understand, a little bit distorted, while the dialogue is actually really loud and clear and crisp and sounds good. But given that it goes back and forth between dialogue and this internal monologue that sounds like crap, the dialogue then sounds worse because it is so much louder than the internal monologue. So it sounds louder than it actually is because of that contrast. So the internal monologue's negatives, its issues, its deficiencies, not only hurt itself, but it hurts the rest of the audio in terms of dialogue, at least, and voice acting and all that. For me, at least. Maybe that the contrast at least wouldn't bother other people, but I found that annoying. What's more annoying, though, is the fact that there is zero challenge in this game. And that is where I think most people will either be okay with it because they just like the story and they want to see it play out, even though it's always pretty obvious what's going on and where a story is going. But the lack of challenge makes the act of playing the game really boring and makes one question why they're even playing it and not just watching one of the movies or reading one of the books or listening to an audiobook, which would probably be pretty nice. I would bet there are probably some pretty good audiobooks and maybe some ensemble performances of various audiobooks. Those could be fun. But the reason why there's no challenge is because when you are going through your little web of clues and trying to figure out what goes together, you can just brute force it. There's no penalty for linking two things that don't go together when you are interacting with a character and trying to find out some information or use some of your key items that you've collected during this particular case, I guess you'd call it. There's no penalty to that. And there's no penalty to any of it. So if you're interacting with an object and you want to get a fingerprint or find a way of getting a fingerprint off of it to take a impression of the fingerprint, you'll have 3 options, say. And they want you to pick 2 of them. There's no penalty for screwing that up. And that takes away all challenge because you don't have to think about it. And there are some parts where they may have a question or a clue or a bit of information that they want you to say where they want you to say how you know this particular bit of information. And how you know it, in some cases at least that I've experienced, it's just inherent to Poirot's already gained knowledge prior to the game's existence. So it's not you figuring something out based on your own discoveries, your own deductions, your own investigating. It is just, he already knows this, okay? He knows that this is because of that. So just pick this one. And then you pick that one and you're like, okay, good job, Poirot, Mr. Smarty Pants. Thanks for making me feel useless here. But that lack of challenge, due to the lack of penalty, it makes the whole experience, it diminishes the whole experience. But if you enjoy Agatha Christie stories, want some alright story in general, just in terms of the voice acting and all that jazz, it's okay, and it looks nice. The aesthetic has a bit of a painterly vibe to it, just a bit, so it's not quite photorealistic, and it looks nice from a distance. But when they zoom in for the character dialogues, then it looks a bit rough, and the anatomy of characters is not always right. There are cases where you're looking at a character and their arms are clearly broken, and then they were just shoved back on their body in almost the right place. And you think to yourself, how you doing, buddy? You okay? Looks uncomfortable. But whatever. From a distance, again, looks fine. But when they zoom in on characters and you see some of this little bit of jank, it's like, yeah, all right. That is, again, Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, the London case. It's okay, but if you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking for a game with a bit of deduction, investigating, that kind of detective thing where you really have to rack your brain and figure things out on your own, not the game for you. Then we have Smurfs Kart, which I was really excited about. And it looks really, really good. But I'm pretty sure it looks really, really good because it just recycles assets from Mission Belief, which is a fantastic little 3D platformer. And that is where the positives begin and end. Smurfs Kart is maybe, so it's a kart racer, obviously, from the kart in the title. It is maybe the worst kart racer I've ever played, in the sense that it is unbelievably easy. There are only 2 difficulties. You have your fucking slow difficulty, the casual baby difficulty, and then what I think they call ultra speed, which is just, this is how it should be normally speed. And what is ridiculous to me, so on the easiest difficulty, it is super easy. You don't have to think at all. And I would also immediately turn off, it defaults to having auto turning or whatever the hell that is called in a lot of car racers to on. Turn that off because it fucking makes the game feel horrible. I guess I will also say it feels pretty all right. So that's another positive thing. But one of the ways in which it's too easy is that the course design, for the most part, is so lacking of sharp turns or obstacles that require you to use your brake or your handbrake or drift or do anything, because the turns are so wide that you can just turn without having to slow down at all, and nothing that ever gets in your way to any substantial degree. That's easy. That makes it very easy and dull. The levels also in general very uninspired, because it seems again like they are just recycling things from Mission Belief, going so far as the 3 cups, which are comprised of 4 races apiece. So you got 12 courses, and then there are mirrored versions of all those courses. So 12 courses, and then an additional 12 that are just the mirrored versions of those. They are structured and doled out in the same way, the same point at which they happen in Mission Belief. Sometimes words are hard, okay? When you have a bit of dyslexia and word comprehension, reading comprehension, just shut up, okay? They're doled out at the same pace, whatever. So that the beginning parts of Mission Belief, those make up the first cup. The middle part of Mission Belief, those make up the races in the second cup. And then the end areas of Mission Belief, those make up the races in the third cup. And that, well, everything about this game, the more I played it, the more I thought, this just feels like, how can we take a lot from Mission Belief and make another game out of it to make some more money off of all the hard work that was put into Mission Belief, which is a great game. A great game. If you like 3D platformers, I highly recommend it because it looks great, it plays great, it was super fun. There are a few little frustrating elements, but overall, really good time. And I don't give a shit about the Smurfs. But Smurfs Kart, super fucking boring. The course design is just super uninspired. None of it's memorable. None of it stands out as, I love racing in here. Minimal bits of shortcuts and stuff like that. All of the racers, which they're a good chunk, 12 or 16, they have their various special, their character specific special, which range in usefulness. But after I played on the easy difficulty, I said, this is way too easy. I went to the hard one. It was still way too easy. And I'm going to leave the game with this. When I was playing the game on the hard difficulty, I got distracted at one point looking at Discord or Amazon or something. And when I looked back at the screen, the race had already started. I didn't realize the advance between races in the cup and the race had started. When I noticed that it had already started, it was at the point at which I had just been lapped, and these are 3-lap races. So I had just been lapped, I was still at the starting line, hadn't moved an inch, and the rest of the racers had just started their second lap of 3 laps. Thanks to the power-ups and the shenanigans happening with all the other racers of them hurting each other with various power-ups and maybe some purposeful rubber banding, I came back from being a lap behind, from being lapped in this 3-lap race, and I won the race on the hard difficulty. That's fucking insane. I already knew the game was super fucking easy, but when I realized that could happen, the desire to want to keep playing it all was destroyed. It was killed inside of me. And also, regardless of difficulty, hard or easy, once you get a lead, you're good. There were a few times where you'd get bombarded, where I got bombarded with power-ups from people behind me. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about a lot of blue shell equivalents hitting you over and over and over again if you're in first place or stuff of that nature. The power-ups themselves are also pretty whatever. The base power-ups, ignoring the character-specific ones. You've got a shelf. Another thing before I move on to the rest of the games. This is a kart racer in general thing. I hate any kart racer where you can't fire power-ups behind you. So you have an acorn that works like a green shell. So something that isn't homing, but just kind of ricochets a bit and then disappears. You can't shoot it behind you. And when you're in first place, there's no fucking point to shooting it in front of you. I don't want to do it. And it also, in terms of power-ups, allows you to carry 2 at a time, but I could not find a way to switch between the 2. So even if you want to save one of your power-ups, if you, say, have a shield and a homing bee, if you don't want to waste the homing bee, but you want to use your shield because you're in first place and the blue shell equivalent is heading your way, you have to waste the bee so that it can get to the shield and use the shield. That's also annoying. But that's Smurfs Kart. Do not recommend. Super disappointing. Looks great, plays fine, boring level design, uninspired level design, and just beyond easy. I have not played a kart racer as easy as this. Now my nose is kind of running. I don't know why. My nose is running because I was thinking about jokes and they all sucked, so I just said nothing. Dogfight, a sausage bomber story. This is a horizontal scrolling shmup, so side scrolling shmup that looks bad and plays worse. And what's most baffling is that I'm playing on Xbox. I think it's on PlayStation as well. Maybe on Switch too, probably. Because why wouldn't you put your game on Switch? But it is a series exclusive. This game is not available on Xbox One. And if it is, then it's a completely different version from this. And that is weird if you decide to Google this game and see what it looks like. Because it does not look like it requires the power of a series console. But it plays horribly. It's also very, very easy. There's no difficulty. No, there was a difficulty option ever. It defaults to mild, which I would guess would be the normal. And it's just super easy. But visually, it looks like a kid's PC game from 30 years ago-ish. 25, 30 years ago. Think putt-putt and that kind of stuff. It kind of reminds me of that. And the ship, your plane movement, it feels very rough. It's not fluid, and it just never felt good. I had turned off the screen shaking because that was really distracting and excessive. But it's a really basic shmup where you have your fire, You have auto bombs. They just fire in themselves. You don't have to do those, I don't think. And you shoot enemies. They'll drop medals occasionally, which you use to improve your score. And then the bonus ships, the bonus planes that you destroy, will drop weapon power-ups. And occasionally planes will drop heals or little shields and stuff of that nature. And then you get to a boss, which is super easy. None of them are hard. It's a horizontal scrolling shmup, but it is not a bullet hell game. There are in all of the shmups I've played in recent memory, this has the fewest number of bullets on screen, to the point at times where you can go a while without seeing many bullets at all, and it's like, oh, what is this? This is not enjoyable at all, and there's no challenge. And why am I playing this? And the answer is, who knows? For me, obviously, it's got sausage in the title. How could I not? But it was not an enjoyable time. Then we've got Sengoku Dynasty, which is an early access game from Toplitz. Is it Toplitz Studios? Who is the not the production, the publisher. And they put out other games in the Dynasty franchise, I guess, including Medieval Dynasty, which is the other one I played. And there's potential in Sengoku Dynasty. It takes place in feudal Japan. It's an open world, survival, city building, crafting, resource gathering, lots of checkboxes type of game that could be fun when it's out of early access, or maybe when it's a bit of a ways into its early access life, because currently it is poorly optimized. I dropped all the settings to low to get it to just run well enough, but there's still a bit of stuttering. And it's rough. It's rough. And in its current state, I can't recommend it because of that, and because you have these other options that can fill your city build outside of course, the theming and the setting and all that. Medieval Dynasty has a lot more going for it, a lot more interesting characters and dialogues and options, and it's way more fleshed out. But that game went through the early access process as well, and I played it after it had already hit 1.0 and had a lot of time put into it on console when it got its console release. So this game could very well get there eventually, but it's not there right now. And the biggest detractor from it currently is the performance stuff. Because I can deal with jank, I can deal with shallow systems and stuff of that nature. At one point when I was skinning a deer, my knee clipped through my head and then it flipped backwards, the calf part of it, and just spun around for a little bit. And that, of course, breaks immersion, but it's also kind of amusing and enjoyable in its own right. And that's fine. But the regular stuttering was not fine for me. I find that stuff really distracting. And the fact that, while it looks all right, my system should be able to handle it fine with all the settings maxed out. It defaulted to them all maxed out because I'm pretty sure it said to itself, you could handle this, but it's just not super well optimized. And a bit of jank in the controls. The tutorials are okay, but some of the menu things get busted. It got stuck in the menus at one point. I had to relaunch the game because it would not let me escape, leave a certain tutorial message, no matter what I did. So there are things like that, some bugs of that nature as well that hinder the experience, which again, I chalk up to being in early access. So if you are a fan of city builders and all that kind of stuff, You may want to keep your eye on it. You may want to wish list it. But in the meantime, maybe check out Medieval Dynasty. I think that game's also gone on sale quite a bit. So keep your eye out on that. But in what I played of Medieval Dynasty around long, I enjoy that game. I wouldn't mind getting into that more at some time, but it's one of those games where if you decide to play it, you're gonna invest quite a bit of time into it. There's a lot in it. But then last up is Cow the Kangaroo Bend the Rules DLC, which is different from the previous DLC I played for the game in that it's not a part of the main game. It has its own option in the main menu where you jump into it and then you have 5 brand new levels and 5 new challenges. As I was playing the game, messing around in the hub world, and then playing through the first level, I was reminded of what didn't work for me both the other times I played Cow the Kangaroo. And that is its lack of personality. It is generally a good-looking, colorful game, plays well, but there's nothing about the world or the character of Cow that stands out in any way. This is the kind of character that you could see in the bargain bin as a plushie in a Big Lots or whatever, or at a dollar store, or at a Michael's. That is branded, and you see the name Cow the Kangaroo, and you're like, "Oh, that's from something? Okay, whatever. It's a few bucks, I'll get it, but I don't know what this is from, and I don't really care to find out." And then the levels are a little frustrating in how they're designed, and that everything seems like everything is just ever so slightly off. Like this platform should be a little bit more over here, and this gap should be a little bit different, and it just feels like it could be a little bit more tighter. It feels like a desk that was put together, a piece of furniture that was put together where you put in all the screws and you tighten them just enough so that it would stay in place, and then you were going to remember to tighten them all so that it was really solid, and you just forgot to tighten all the screws so that it's technically all together, but it's loose. It wobbles. It's not structurally perfectly sound, which is it's too bad because again, looks pretty good and plays well. Combat's boring though. You are a kangaroo with boxing gloves, so you just punch the shit out of everything, and everything is easy to beat the shit out of with your punching with your boxing gloves. But yeah, that's it. That is it. So that'll do it for this here episode. Went long than expected, but I hope y'all enjoyed it. Whatever. Anywho, that is going to do it for this episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, I am Mark Krishnez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you'd like to support me and my nonsense, if you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can do so over at patreon.com/PXS. That is again, patreon.com/PXS. Depending on the tier you support all of me at, you get access to a weekly Q&A. Does that sound like fun? Well, look into it, and maybe you can join in on the fun. You also may get occasional random streams at the all-you-can oatmeal tier, which is also the tier that you go for the Q&A. It's all-you-can oatmeal. It is all-you-can oatmeal. That's my play on all you can eat. Get it? It's dumb, I know, but so am I. But if you want links to other dumb stuff, including the Patreon, like the site, the YouTube, the Discord, etc., you can find all those links and more over at pxsausage.com. That is pxsausage.com. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoy this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and a wonderful, wonderful weekend. But for now, adios, arrivederci, bye!
It's go time, go daddy. It's go time, go daddy.